Well, it's wonderful for me to be here with all of you and here in Athens. It's a very special visit for me because, as you'll see, this is my home page for many years. However, I've never been to Athens before. So why would this image be so important to me? Well, there are really three reasons, and the first of them is I don't think this clock is giving me the fair amount of time. I was supposed to have 20 minutes. Oh, I see. Okay, fine. Sorry, just a small technical note. So the first reason is that 40 years ago, I was a graduate student at UC Berkeley, and I realized the fundamental importance of cyberspace and the new digital world that was going to unfold, and how important it would be that democracy could exist in that world. So I dedicated my research to trying to find a way to do voting, kind of bedrock of democracy, or one of the key ingredients, in cyberspace. And I found a way to do it, and I convinced myself that the only possible way would be to use encryption, because encryption is the only thing that actually empowers individuals in cyberspace not only to protect their assets, but also their privacy and their information. And privacy is an essential ingredient in voting, as it was here 2,500 years ago. So the second reason is because around that same time, the director of our national security agency in the United States, maybe you've heard of them. Yes. The new director decided that there should be no public research in cryptography. So not only would I be out of a job, but I might get put in jail for publishing my voting system. So he wrote letters to the heads of the major academic scientific organizations that sponsor conferences, like the IEEE and the ACM in the computing field, and he threatened them with the full force of the federal government, with imprisonment, every other possible thing, if they would even have a session on cryptography, let alone a whole conference on it. And so what do you think I did as a graduate student at Berkeley? Any guesses? I organized a conference on cryptography. And more than that, I created the International Association for Cryptologic Research secretly and announced it at the conference. And when I did that, that was the end of cryptography being forbidden, because scientific associations are protected by the United Nations. And since then, every year we've run several conferences, the IACR, globally, 3 annual conferences a year, and then half a dozen workshops. We publish a journal. So this is the main and only real academic organization in the field, and it has enough money in the bank to run conferences for 2 years, even if nobody comes. So there's no way it's going to be shut down. So that's a second reason I'm here, because otherwise no one would be here, right? We wouldn't be talking about cryptocurrencies if there was no public research in cryptography. So, as I said, voting is only part of the basis for democracy. As we all know, one needs a protected sphere, the ability to discuss without fear and to express oneself, to obtain information without being surveilled. And these civil society rights are very difficult to guarantee in cyberspace, where it is incredibly easy to essentially spy on people. And the way to think about it, it's become extremely clear recently, but I realized then, is in terms of what's now called metadata. So if you know who talks to whom and when, the social graph, and if you know who, where someone pays, everywhere they pay, and whoever pays them, those are both more or less equivalent ways to create a profile of an individual that we are now learning is enough to either find out enough about people that you can manipulate the political process. As we've seen, many people feel we're at the end of democracy because of Cambridge Analytica and the like being able to create social tensions, to manipulate elections, and so forth. And similarly, I was recently in China, and people there told me, they're really feeling in the last year it's really amping up, and there's so much surveillance, everyone has to use WeChat and Alipay, but they're very careful about anything they would say on those medium, and then, there's tons of cameras and everything. And so the idea of learning who's friends with whom and when they communicate, what you do in terms of transactions, that's enough to basically keep people in line, kind of ratchet down the self-censorship and I think feeling of a lack of joy in life. I visited East Germany once. It was was worse, but I think the main difference was that the surveillance was more perfected. So I found at Berkeley ways to hide the social graph, to allow you to communicate securely with anyone you want to, but without revealing to anyone who you talk to and when. This is a so-called traffic analysis, a part of the metadata problem. And I also found a way to allow electronic payments to be conducted so that they would not reveal the links between people and transactions. And that was, we'll come back to the messaging in a minute, but the payment system was called eCash, and it worked on what was called blind signature technology. And in the mid-90s, if you go to my website at chaum.com, you can see a whole museum of eCash where we issued eCash as an airdrop called Cyberbucks. We had a bunch of shops signed up in exchange for that would sell things with Cyberbucks. We had Deutsche Bank, which was, maybe it's not a very popular institution here in Greece. But let's say we had issuers around the world in different currencies issuing eCash. And the way eCash works is completely different from the way blockchain payments work and all other payments, really. And so, in the blockchain, you make a payment from one wallet ID to another wallet ID, and that's recorded on a ledger, and it's publicly visible. So that links the payer to the payee. That creates the social graph in a transparent and maybe immutable permanent manner. This is exactly what you don't want. That undoes any possibility of metadata protection and is antithetical to what we need for democracy. So let me tell you the third reason why I'm here. And that is because I found a way to solve what is the $1 trillion problem. And that is, how can we create an alternative to Facebook and WeChat and the like that offers the same functionality to consumers, but that shreds the metadata using blockchain? Make something that's so it's easy for people to just leave those legacy spy applications that people hate so much and move over to something that is blockchain-based, perfectly shredding all this information and is so distributed that no one can take it over and manipulate it. So that's what my little company has found a way to do, and it's based on these ideas that I mentioned to you. Let me show you now a 2-minute video that, I'm sorry, I've got some more slides here. Let's talk about, Facebook in particular. No one has anything nice to say about Facebook, as you've noticed. That's just type in one search and you find every article that comes up is hating on them. And you don't see that in China about WeChat, but that's part of the problem. So what people have realized that, Zuckerberg has said publicly, all their new users are on messaging. And so what they're doing with Libra, which was mentioned in the previous talk, is they're trying to find a way to combine messaging and payments, which is the killer app. That's what billions of people are using around the world. But in a way where they can still extract the metadata, who you talk to and when and where you pay and who pays you, and use that, of course, to, make money off of you and maybe destroy democracy along the way. So let me just try to make a little more concrete. This is an example from MIT, just the social graph that was revealed by this researcher's email. Everyone that he communicated with over email, you start to put that all together. Imagine what this looks like about you today with all the different messaging and email and other stuff, phone that you use. Because remember, what did Edward Snowden tell us? He told us that in the intelligence community, which is an odd name, they have a thing they call the full take. Does anyone remember that? Edward Snowden told us that's what they call it in the intelligence community, the full take. What is the full take? That was his big message to us. That means that every single bit that travels anywhere in the world on any kind of telecommunications network is captured by them and stored, whether it's still encrypted or not. That's a big problem. That's spooky. And recently it was revealed, or it was a few years ago, that China also has that kind of capability. And then, of course, there are cooperations between all kinds of countries that we've found out about, also developing and giving access to this sort of thing to everybody in the intelligence community. So this is a serious and very concrete issue. So let me show you how the technology that my company has developed, and which is actually was starting to work, and we're making some important announcements, and I'll give you a little bit of a hint about some of that in a moment. But we actually have two different software developments that are at different stages. So we have Elixxir, which is our messaging platform. So it shreds the metadata before it's even constituted. And then we have our Praxis development in the Cayman Islands, which is a new type of consensus algorithm and payment system that is fully quantum resistant and is also much more robust against takedown by nation states and other large actors than any blockchain technology currently out there. So watch this space for some fundamental breakthroughs in the basis of blockchain from Praxis. But Elixxir is at a much more advanced stage, and let me just show you a 2-minute video that will show you how I solved the metadata messaging problem and the payments privacy.
Suppose Alice wants to send a message to Bob, but she doesn't want anyone to know that the two of them are communicating. Message content can easily be protected by so-called end-to-end encryption, but this does not protect the information about who's talking to whom and when, the metadata, which is increasingly recognized as far more revealing and more challenging to protect. Each member of a team of nodes, in order to protect the metadata, successively shuffles the batch of encrypted messages using its container of secretly arranged tubes and sending the messages without delay through to the next team member. Even just a single node can keep senders from being linked to recipients. Alice also gets a receipt informing her confidentially that her message was provided to Bob. Team members then destroy their secret pattern of tubes, making way for a new team ready for a new batch. Earlier, each node is chosen independently as a kind of random secret key, which input tube to connect to which output tube. Elixxir's breakthrough over the type of messaging I open sourced in the 80s is a way that enables almost all the work to be done well in advance, yielding the only known way to provide real-time metadata protection smartphone to smartphone. Elixxir, thus, is able to uniquely provide a new, ultimate metadata level protection of confidentiality in all your online communications and payments. For the first time, giving you a protected sphere, protecting your digital world today and your digital future.
Okay, so we really built it. It's really running. This, if you download our apps, which I'll come to in a moment, you can see the dashboard, the Alpha network. We've got the APIs and libraries to allow people to interface to the nodes. We've got a messaging client, which we're going to be revealing shortly for Android and iOS. And we have a very vibrant global community, the XX Collective, which is the whole basis of what we're doing. And I've been spending a lot of time meeting with the community. And we have various goals. And you can see we've got several thousand users of our apps. And you can find out tons of stuff about what we're doing and everything on there. And you can see the Alpha Node dashboard in operation, and we also have a program for local leaders, which, as you know, is a key aspect of this, the whole space. And so if it interests you to help us, and may end up helping you too, ultimately, then we would be very pleased to talk to you. We're building out our local leadership program. And let me just say one more thing about digital democracy, since I started with that. I don't actually have a slide for it, but when our technology goes mainnet, the governance of it will be using something that I've invented, which is called sample voting. And it is, well, to say that I invented it is, maybe that's misleading, because actually people were using it 2,500 years ago to create Western civilization. It actually copies exactly the way the the Athenian jury system worked with secret ballots and binary votes using the claritaria and the random distribution of voters to issues that you may know about, which was the ultimate deciding power in those days, which allowed Western civilization to be created. So we will use that for blockchain, and no other chain is going to have that. And it also has the really important property that it has a way to stop vote selling, and no other system does. The only known way to stop vote selling besides the decoy ballots and proof of decoy that I invented, that we've implemented and used in a binding election for the Council of Europe in sample voting, the only other known way is the voting booth. So what I'd like to urge you to do for your own good and for the community and for the future of democracy is go to that web page and download the app of your choice and join our community. And we're looking forward to working with all of you to bring back the possibility of digital democracy. Thank you very much.